A joint American-Canadian operation leads to the arrest of multiple associates of one of North America's biggest cocaine traffickers, former Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding. A corrupt mayor in the Philippines sentenced to life imprisonment for human trafficking. All of that and much more on this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly. Arrests were made this past week that relate to the attempted bribery of a juror in a case related to the largest seizure of cocaine in U.S. history. 3 Albanian men were arrested for offering a bribe of $100,000 to a juror in the cocaine trafficking case of Goran Gojic, which was due to start in Brooklyn Federal Court in New York this past Monday, but has now been delayed. Gojic is a former heavyweight boxer for Montenegro who fought professionally in Germany from 2001 to 2012, where he amassed a record of 21-4-2. He is accused of orchestrating 3 Europe-bound shipments of cocaine in 2019, totaling more than 20 tons that were seized in the ports of New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. The third shipment seized is by far the most notable. On June 19, 2019, 35,000 pounds of cocaine, worth over $1 billion, were seized from 7 shipping containers aboard the MSC Caine at the Port of Philadelphia in what was and still is the largest seizure of cocaine in American history. The cocaine had been loaded onto the ship at sea near the coast of Peru, with the drugs having been loaded onto the Caine with the full complicity of the ship's crew, 8 of whom have since been jailed for their roles in this drug plot. Gojic was a key figure in this and the other plots he is accused of, as he coordinated with the sources of the cocaine in Colombia, as well as the crew members who transported the coke from speedboats onto the ship in the dead of night, and additionally he was able to corrupt port workers in both the US and Europe. The cocaine seized on the MSC Caine is believed to have belonged to a consortium of European organized crime groups, most prominently the Kinahan cartel, the Irish cocaine cartel, which is considered the most powerful cocaine trafficking organization in Europe. They are said to control approximately 1/3 of the cocaine traffic flowing into Europe. Goran Gojic was charged and arrested in October of 2022 at Miami International Airport while he was on his way to a boxing convention in Puerto Rico. Just as he was about to go on trial this week, the 3 men from Albania were arrested for attempting to bribe a juror in Gojic's case. The 3 men are Mustafa Teja, Valmir Krasniki, and Afrim Kupa. The 3 were caught on a video recording when they had gathered for a meeting at Krasniki's house in Staten Island. In the recording, they discussed how they were going to bribe a juror, known to Teja, $100,000. However, the plot never materialized as they were arrested this past week. Teja has been released on a $150,000 bond, while Krasniki and Kupa are still detained. Of the 3 arrested men, only much is known about Kupa. He is said to be associated with the Gambino crime family, one of the 5 families of New York, and he worked with the Gambinos, allegedly supplying a member of the family with multi-kilogram amounts of cocaine and marijuana. In the past, Kupa was linked to former nightclub king Chris Paciello, who also had strong underworld connections and was involved in criminal activity. Kupa was involved in numerous bank and jewelry heists, including one Brooklyn bank robbery, where he and his crew entered the bank roof by using a blowtorch and made off with hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 2011, Kupa was arrested along with Gambino mobsters Joseph Sclafani and Neil Lombardo for trafficking cocaine and marijuana, and for this he was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. But an interesting development concerning the largest seizure of cocaine in American history. The thing that interests me about this story is all these different criminal groups interacting with each other. As I mentioned earlier, the Kinahan cartel are believed to have been investors in the $1 billion shipment of cocaine seized in Philadelphia. You also have Gojic, a Montenegrin, and 3 Albanians also involved in this case. The Kinahans have long been working with Balkan organized crime groups, especially the Bosnian drug lord Edin Tito Gašinin. So it's no surprise that they would be working with individuals from Balkan countries in this case as well. Balkan criminals in general are increasingly coming to dominate the international cocaine trade, whether it be Albanians, Bosnians, Montenegrins, or Serbians. They are well renowned in the international criminal community for their ability to arrange the logistics of cocaine trafficking, and that's what Goran Gojic was accused of doing in this case. but an interesting case to me that shows how intertwined Balkan criminals have become with international cocaine trafficking, and this is a trend that is going to continue as individuals from these countries continue to control every single step in the cocaine trade, whether it be from directly obtaining the cocaine from the producer countries to arranging the logistics to distributing the drugs on the streets of Europe. On November 20th, Alice Guo, the former mayor of the city of Bonbon in the Philippines, was sentenced to life imprisonment on charges of human trafficking, along with 7 others related to the operations of a scam compound on land that she owned in Bonbon. In March of 2024, officials from the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission of the Philippines raided this compound, which was located just a few hundred feet from the mayor's office. They had previously raided the same compound in February 2023. On this occasion, inside the compound, they found almost 1,000 enslaved individuals of many different nationalities who were forced to engage in cryptocurrency investment scams. And this is a topic I've touched upon many times, especially in the last couple months. As well as in Myanmar and Cambodia, these scam compounds using forced human labor are a very huge problem in the Philippines. Officials were made aware of the activities going on at the compound after a Vietnamese worker had escaped and contacted the police. Also found on the compound were luxury villas, tortoises, luxury cars, and a large swimming pool. It was later determined that the compound was being run by Zun Yuan, an online gambling company that has reportedly engaged in pig butchering scams. What pointed investigators to Guo being involved was the fact that an electricity bill in her name was found at the compound. Also discovered were underground tunnels that led to a vacant plot of land owned by Guo. And now some background on the mayor who this week was convicted of human trafficking. Alice Guo was the mayor of Bonbon from 2022 until her suspension in 2024, which is when the allegations of her ties to human trafficking and scam compounds came to light. Before entering politics, Guo had been a successful businesswoman in the area, holding shares in at least 11 companies since 2011, such as car dealerships and taxi companies. With her success came great wealth, and she was known for flaunting expensive items that included a Chanel bag and even a $200,000 Serpentine Viper necklace. She even owned her own private helicopter. In 2022, Guo was elected the mayor of Bonbon, and for the duration of her run as mayor, she was very popular amongst the local community as she was viewed as a self-made businesswoman who did not come from a prominent family and was able to succeed despite her perceived humble roots of growing up on a pig farm. She would hand out food to local people on Christmas and even uploaded YouTube videos daily where she interacted with her constituents. But this perception of her would shatter in mid-2024 when her ties to human trafficking were revealed. These raids came right as Filipino President Bongbong Marcos was turning up the pressure on what are dubbed Philippine Offshore Gaming Operators, or POGOs, before he outright banned them in July of 2024. After the raids that year, it was discovered that Guo owned 50% of Baofu Land Development, which owned the property that the scam compound in Bonbon was located on. The Baofu company was registered by Guo, along with others in 2019. In 2020, Guo applied for the gambling license of Hongsheng Gaming Technology, which would be the company that was raided in 2023 for operating cryptocurrency scams on the compound. The allegations that came to light in 2024 saw Guo subpoenaed to testify at a series of Senate hearings conducted in June and July of 2024. However, Guo didn't attend the hearings, citing her physical and mental health. This turned out to be a ruse, as Guo would flee the country, whereafter she was charged with contempt and had her assets frozen. Guo was arrested a month later in Indonesia and was extradited back to the Philippines a couple weeks after that, and was subsequently charged for crimes such as human trafficking and money laundering. After her arrest, it would be revealed that her name was not actually Alice Guo. It was determined that Guo was actually Guo Huaping, and that she wasn't Filipino, but she was from Fujian, China. It was determined that her whole backstory of growing up in the Philippines on a pig farm was made up and that her birth certificate was a complete fabrication. This has led to much speculation that Guo is actually a Chinese spy, with multiple Filipino politicians making these accusations. Fellow scam compound operator and Chinese businessman Shi Zhejiang, who I covered on my episode last week, has also claimed that Guo was a Chinese spy and has cited a dossier where Guo listed her home address as the headquarters of the Chinese Communist Party in Fujian. However, despite all of these allegations regarding Alice Guo being a Chinese spy, nothing has come to light. These allegations have not been proven, and Guo continues to vehemently deny any of these allegations. But a fascinating case that illustrates the duplicity of politicians in general. But this is a whole nother level, as Guo was directly involved in human trafficking and illegal gambling on a large scale. And for this, she had to pay the ultimate price and be sentenced to life in prison. This sends a strong message by the Filipino government that they are not going to tolerate these kinds of operations going forward, at least on the surface. It's hard to imagine that a lot of these pogos that are still going on do not have some level of complicity by local officials. I'm sure there's many other cases like that that are going to come to light in the future. To me, it's also curious why Alice Guo would become involved in these illegal activities, considering how successful she was before. There's the theory that she was made to engage in these illegal activities directly by the Chinese government to cause disruption in the Philippines. But again, the allegations of Guo being a Chinese spy have not yet definitively been proven, and she has not been indicted or prosecuted for anything like that. But again, the case of Alice Guo shows the continuing rise of compounds throughout Southeast Asia where enslaved individuals are forced to engage in cryptocurrency scams, pig butchering scams, or romance scams in an industry that generates hundreds of billions of dollars a year for criminal organizations throughout Southeast Asia. The problem only continues to get worse as criminal organizations such as Chinese triads continue to see the lucrative profits made from these scam centers, which in a lot of cases is more profitable than the international drug trade and requires a lot less effort. So despite the takedown and life imprisonment of Alice Guo, this industry will continue to thrive, and I'm sure that many more politicians and countries, such as the Philippines and others such as Cambodia, will be revealed in the future to be completely complicit in these types of criminal activities. On the morning of Tuesday, November 18th, 10 individuals across Canada, Mexico, and Colombia were arrested as part of the second phase of the joint American-Canadian investigation dubbed Operation Giant Slalom, which aims to dismantle the drug trafficking organization, a former Canadian Olympic snowboarder, and one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives, Ryan Wedding, who has been dubbed by the FBI as the modern-day Pablo Escobar, which to me is the usual hyperbole by American law enforcement. So I don't take this label very seriously, but that's what they're calling him. Wedding is arguably one of the top traffickers of cocaine across North America and is alleged to ship up to 60 tons of cocaine into the United States annually in an operation worth billions of dollars. In alliance with the powerful Sinaloa cartel, Wedding's organization is said to have trafficked hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Colombia through Mexico and into Southern California, where it is then loaded onto semi-trucks and smuggled into Canada. He is also wanted for orchestrating 4 murders and for plotting an attempted murder. Now a little bit of background on Ryan Wedding. He was a member of the Canadian national snowboard team from 1995 to 2002. Before competing for Team Canada in the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, where he placed 24th overall in the parallel giant slalom. And after his snowboarding career was over in the mid-2000s, Ryan Wedding went down a darker path as he started to engage in large-scale drug trafficking. Wedding's first brush with the law came when he was named in a search warrant for growing marijuana in 2006 in British Columbia. However, for this he was never charged. In 2010, he was convicted of attempting to buy cocaine from an undercover U.S. government agent in 2008, and for this he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. In 2015, after he was released from prison, Wedding and another man were charged with drug offenses in Nova Scotia, but he was able to escape arrest for this, and he has been on the run ever since. Wedding is said to have then fled to Mexico and linked up with the powerful Sinaloa cartel, and as well as making links with other powerful criminal organizations, such as the Kinahan cartel, which I talked about in the very first story. His elevation in the criminal world was first revealed in September of 2024 when him and numerous other associates were indicted in a California court as part of the first phase of Operation Giant Slalom. Back in September of 2024, when many of the coordinators of the semi-trucks carrying the massive loads of cocaine were rounded up. Also arrested at that time was Wedding's right-hand man, Andrew Clark. In November 2023, Wedding allegedly had Clark orchestrate a murder on his behalf in Caledon, Ontario, over a missing shipment of cocaine. However, the hitman in this attack targeted the wrong house, and he ended up shooting dead an innocent Indian couple who were in town visiting their children. As I mentioned, Ryan Wedding is still believed to be hiding out in Mexico under the protection of the Sinaloa cartel, and it was also announced that the reward for his capture was raised this week from $10 million to $15 million. Now on to the individuals arrested this past week on charges that include cocaine trafficking and conspiracy to commit murder. The individuals arrested this past week, as well as assisting Wedding in trafficking tons of cocaine across North America, are also accused of helping him murder an FBI informant who was shot dead in January of this year at a restaurant in Medellin, Colombia. Murdered FBI informant was a Canadian of Colombian descent by the name of Jonathan Acevedo Garcia, who was an associate of Weddings in Montreal. Acevedo Garcia had numerous criminal convictions, including for fentanyl trafficking. On January 31st of this year, he was eating in a restaurant in Medellin, Colombia, when a gunman shot him dead before escaping on a motorcycle driven by an accomplice. Wedding is believed to have ordered Acevedo Garcia's murder after discovering he had become an FBI informant and was planning to testify against him in court. The person who was arrested this past Tuesday for allegedly orchestrating the assassination on behalf of Wedding is notorious Montreal street gang leader Atna Tupac Ana, who I've discussed multiple times on this channel before, and to me it was pretty shocking to find out that he has connections to Ryan Wedding. Ana, in the past couple of years, has become a major player in the Montreal underworld. Along with being a major drug trafficker, he has been partly responsible for the spat of extortion-related violence that has been carried out in the Montreal area in recent years, as he has fought with other street gangs for the right to extort businesses and restaurants in the Montreal area. While he was once aligned with the Hells Angels and the Rizzuto Mafia family, in the past couple of years he has fallen out with both organizations, and this has led to much of the violence that has played out across Montreal's streets since then. Ana is said to have worked with Wedding in recent years to deliberately lower the price of a kilo of cocaine in the Montreal area so as to empower independent traffickers and put a squeeze on more established organizations such as the Hells Angels and Rizzutos, and thereby establish a monopoly over the region's cocaine trade. Ana is believed to have hired the gunman used in the murder of Jonathan Acevedo Garcia in Colombia, and it is said that in return for this, he was paid $150,000 by Wedding and was given the equivalent of $500,000 worth of cocaine. Another of the individuals arrested and charged this past Tuesday was Deepak Balwant Paradkar, a lawyer from Thornhill, Ontario. Paradkar has been a defense lawyer in the Toronto area for close to 30 years now, and he has long been accused of corrupt practices. He was allegedly responsible for the logistics of Wedding's drug empire, helping to map out the routes of the trucks carrying the organization's cocaine from Los Angeles to Canada. He also allegedly contacted other lawyers in Canada and the United States representing other associates of Wedding, and he allegedly paid these lawyers to reveal if their clients were cooperating with the authorities. In October of 2024, it is said that Paradkar found out that Jonathan Acevedo Garcia had become an informant against Wedding, and it is thought that he is the one who suggested to Wedding that he murder Acevedo Garcia. Another person arrested this past Tuesday was a man by the name of Gurswak Singh Bal. Bal is the founder of The Dirty News, a website that up until this week covered crime stories in Canada, particularly related to organized crime. And a little bit of a side note, up until this past week, I was a frequent visitor to The Dirty News, as it was a site that published uncensored videos and tidbits that weren't found on many other media sources. And this is how I actually discovered that this case had come down, as when I clicked on the site, it said that The Dirty News had been seized by the FBI for allegedly participating in the Ryan Wedding criminal enterprise. And it is alleged that the founder of the site, Gurswak Singh Bal, was allegedly paid $10,000 by Alistair Chapman, an associate of Ryan Wedding, who was also arrested this past week as part of this operation. And Chapman allegedly paid Bal the $10,000 to not make any posts about Wedding on The Dirty News. Chapman is also said to have provided Bal with a picture of Jonathan Acevedo Garcia, which Bal then posted on his site in November of 2024, 2 months before Acevedo Garcia's murder, and Wedding is said to have paid Bal this money in order for Jonathan Acevedo Garcia to be located and killed. Ball has been charged with conspiracy to commit murder in the killing of Acevedo Garcia, and as I mentioned earlier, the Dirty News site this past Tuesday was shut down and seized by the FBI. And there's many other associates who were arrested as part of this second phase of Operation Giant Slalom, but I don't have enough time to go through all of their bios. I just decided here to cover some of the more interesting individuals in this case. But this is an infinitely fascinating case with all these interesting characters from all these different backgrounds. This story has ex-snowboarders, corrupt lawyers, true crime journalists involved. You also get the intertwining with Montreal organized crime, which up until this point, I had no idea that Ryan Wedding had any connections to any of the Montreal organized crime figures. He did spend some time in Montreal early in his career, but up until this point, it had never been revealed that he had any connections to any of these figures, especially to Atna Anna. To me, this came completely out of left field, as I've been constantly following the developments with Atna Anna and the Montreal organized crime scene in general. So to me, this was especially interesting, considering that he is now tied to one of, if not the largest, cocaine trafficking organizations in North America. It's interesting to see how these arrests will have an impact on the wedding organization. I'm sure it will in the long term, because he had so many key players taken out, such as the corrupt lawyer Deepak Balwant Paradkar, who was responsible for the logistics of the cocaine trafficking. But once again, despite his key associates being taken out of the picture, Ryan Wedding continues to be a free man operating in Mexico under the protection of one of the country's most powerful drug cartels. Despite all the arrests of his associates, he is said to still be constantly sending cocaine shipments from Mexico into the US and then into Canada. It's said that most of the cocaine seizures at the Canadian border is cocaine belonging to Wedding, but much more is getting through undetected. Despite how elusive Ryan Wedding has been, I think it's only a matter of time, though, before he's either arrested or killed, whether it be by law enforcement or a rival Mexican cartel. That remains to be seen. But since he has become this high profile in the last couple of years, especially with him being placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, I think it is only a matter of time before we see the downfall of Ryan Wedding and his vast cocaine trafficking empire worth billions of dollars that continues to flood North America with cocaine. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just want to remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe so we can help grow this channel. Also, please make sure to support my channel. You can do that by just contributing $2.99 a month. Any contribution is greatly appreciated, and it helps me to continue making these videos. I'll be back next week to report on more stories concerning the global criminal underworld. Thank you so much for tuning in.